Hi everyone, Jonathan here, Wild Cockatiel Games, Unity game programming for beginners. And in this video, what we want to do is set up some lose conditions so that if our player goes too far out of bounds, the game will end, or if the player perhaps runs into themselves, as in the head runs into the tails, the game will end. We'll see how we're doing for time. We might just do the borders part first and save the tail for the next video. So in this case here, one of the assets we imported earlier is this board vignette, and we could just drag it into the scene, but this creates a sprite, and this is going to be more part of our user interface. So I want to add this as an image instead as part of our UI. So what we're going to do here is go up to Game Object, create a 2D object, sorry, not a 2D object, a UI, and go down here to select image. And what this is going to do immediately in your hierarchy, it's going to create a canvas, and the canvas sort of overlays the entire scene. But if we imported an image onto, or we already have an image, but if we just drop this vignette onto here, the board rather, and then we double click it, I'm going to zoom out, and we're going to see it's not really where it's supposed to be. And also the canvas is currently set to screen space overlay. So if you haven't dealt with a canvas before, this isn't going to make too much sense yet. But if I drag this right here into the middle of the canvas, you see that the canvas is really big, and then our game space is down here in the bottom left corner. Yet if we look at the game, it actually overlines, the canvas is on top. I prefer to just work in a view more where the canvas aligns exactly with our game. So what we're going to do here instead is set the canvas to a different scale mode, or different render mode. So I'm going to select render mode and just change this to screen space camera. And now it's asking for a render camera, so we're just going to take our main camera and drag that right in. And you can see now the canvas matches our screen directly. So we have this image here, and it is set in the center of the screen at the moment, but I want to scale it up. And to do this, I'm just going to press T on the keyboard, which selects this scale option up here. And then I'm just going to drag the edges over until we get something that looks fairly decent. And we're just adding the borders so they're over top here. If I go to my game view, I can see. Maybe bring the bottom corner up a little bit. Yeah, and now we have a bit of a border. Now, it does look pretty bland right now, so I want to spice it up just a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to go to Google Chrome, and we're going to go to a website here. And I'm going to put in here unsplash.com. And this is a place where you can get royalty-free stock images that you can use. And since we're dealing with a snake, I'm just going to type forest, and I'm going to find a horizontal type of image that looks decent enough. This works here. You don't have to do this. This is an optional step, but this is just to make it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to drag this down onto my desktop, and then I am going to drag it and drag it in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my canvas, and I'm going to add another UI object, another image, and I should just rename these. So I'm going to call this BG, and I'm going to rename the other one to be outline. So now I'm just going to change my BG to this forest, and I'm going to scale this forest up the same way I did the other one in the scene view. And immediately, obviously, it covers up everything, which isn't what we want. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this color, and we're just going to turn the transparency down a lot, just to give it a little bit of a background and make it look slightly more interesting than plain blue. And if we go into our game view, yeah, it just looks a little bit more interesting this way. Again, you don't have to do this at all. And obviously, I'm not a graphic designer, so really, if you were making a professional game, you'd want it to look a lot better than this. But for our intents and purposes, this will do. It is practical and it is functional. Okay. Drag this down a little more to make me happy with this. Just play around with it until you get something you're happy with. Okay, So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some borders that the player is going to lose if they run into these. So to do this, we're going to go up here and we're going to just create some empty 2D objects, or just to create an empty object. And we're going to call this border holder. And I'm going to reset the position here to 0 so it's in the center of the screen. And then under this, I'm going to go gameplay, create empty child, and create another object. And I'm just going to call this top border. And now we're going to add a box collider 2D. And we can basically just drag this. Well, we have two options. We can either drag the collider itself up, or we can drag the object up. I'm going to drag the game object itself up by pressing W, or by selecting this one up here, dragging this up to about the top border. And now I'm going to edit the collider. I'm just going to stretch this out over this way, to the left and right, making sure it's going off the screen, and matching the bottom up to roughly to where the bottom part of our top border is. Now I'm just going to copy this object and paste it and change it to rename it to bottom border. And this is set to 4.89. Let's just change this to 4.9 to have a slightly more even number. And we can make this bottom one minus 4.9. It doesn't quite match up, so I'm going to have to maneuver it manually. And we're going to do the same thing for the left and right. So copy paste the bottom border, call this left border. And the Y, we can change it to 0, and now we're just going to move this over to the left and then edit the sizes of the borders. So don't need it long on the left and right this time, but we need it tall. And copy paste the left border over here, just drag it over, change it to right border, and we're good. So now that we have that set up, we're going to select all of these by holding shift and selecting them, and then we're going to add a new script, and we're going to create a script, and we're going to call it screen edge. And that will appear here under our assets folder. So let's go drag that down into our scripts folder. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead here and open up our screen edge. And it's going to open in mono develop. And we don't need these start and update method in here, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these. And instead, we're going to create a method we used in some of the other scripts like food. And we're going to call it private void on trigger enter 2D. We're going to take in a collider 2D called collider and do our squiggly brackets. And we're just going to print out to test if it's working, test if it can detect that our snake is hitting the screen edge. So print collision detected on name. And we're going to save that and go back to Unity and test this out and see if it works. Go into our console. Collision detected on right border. Okay, awesome. So if it is, then that should mean it is working here. Collision detected on top border. Excellent. So if we already know that the snake is detecting these borders, that means we can just create our lose condition. So to do this, we're going to go up here to our scenes folder for the first time. We're just going to right click here. We're going to go up to create and scroll down to scene. And we are going to call our new scene lose and enter it. It's going to ask us if we want to save, which we do. And this is where we can use one of those other graphics we imported earlier. Where is it here? Snake game. There we go. And we already have a big you lose screen. Excuse me. We could drag it in as a sprite, but again, I want to do this as a UI object, partially just to get you guys comfortable with using UI objects. And a little challenge to yourself, set this canvas, if you remember how, just pause the video, and set it to overlay the screen just like we did in the previous section. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll resume. Screen space camera. Drag our main camera in. Going to go game object UI, create an image. There it is. Go back to our UI here and take the lose and drag that in. And now we can actually just click this button, set native size, and that sets it to the size it comes in default at, which is obviously too big for our scene. So now I'm going to scale it down and drag it back into place. Actually, I could just oops. I'm not going to reset the position in this case. Just drag it up a little bit, just so it covers the whole screen. Slightly center it. Yeah. So now all we want to do here is change our script. So instead of printing out that it is going to, that we lose, we're actually going to change to this you lose screen. So how do we go about doing this? Well, we're going to need to use something called the scene manager. And there's a trick with this, because if you just start typing what you think it would be, which is scene manager, nothing's going to come up. There's no completions found. So we actually need to go up here and enter a new using statement that gives us access to adding and using a bunch of different commands, such as the ability to navigate scenes. So we're going to go up here and type using Unity engine dot scene management semicolon. Now if we go back into the method and we start typing scene manager, we get something that comes up. So we're just going to hit tab, press dot, and we're going to get the list of different commands we can use. And in this case, we're just going to type load scene. Now, which scene are we going to load? Well, we're going to load the one we just created. And to do that, we're just going to tell Unity that we want to load the lose scene. So we're going to do in quotation marks lose, spelt exactly how we spelt the scene, including with capitals, so capital L, small O-S-E, different if you did it different, and semicolon. Now, if we press play, we're going to go back to, we're going to go back to our game scene here, press play, and see what happens. We're going to go up, hit the border, and uh-oh, nothing's happening. Why? Well, that's because we need to actually take another step. The scene lose could not be loaded because it has not been added to the build settings. We need to go back to project and go up here to our file window and select build settings, and we need to actually take this extra scene we created and just drag it into our build. And then we can exit out, press play again, and try that one more time. And over here, we have now lost the game. It's a little harsh sounding, but it is working properly. I think that might be long enough for this video, so I'm going to cut it off here. I'll suggest the next video will cover how to do the snake tail, how to make it so that the snake runs into itself. We also lose. However, if you think that you are capable of figuring that out by yourself, by all means, I challenge you to go ahead and do that, in which case just go ahead and skip the next video if you can figure that out and go on to the one after. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one.